Do you remember the first webtoon that you read? Many of you may remember a time when there were no webtoons or manhwas, or at least they weren't that popular. New manga were usually released between Thursday and Friday. After that, we started another journey of waiting a dry week until we had a new chapter. 10 years later, and webtoons are taking over the internet. You can go a day without having some great title being updated. But where did it all start? How did a country like Korea, that wasn't known for producing comics, turn the tide in just a few years? Manhwa has its roots in the Japanese occupation of Korea in 1910, just before the Second World War. Consequently, the presence of comics started during the occupation. At the time, social criticism found an outlet in manhwa, until the Japanese government authorities began to censor and shut down any opposing views during the occupation. Children's cartoons rose from the smoldering ashes after the Korea liberation in 1945, giving way to the comics craze that spiked afterwards. Manhwa's artistic styles incorporated the aesthetics of its more popular counterpart, the manga, to the point that it was easily possible to pick up a copy of manhwa believing it was the latter, or at least until the spread of webtoon. Like manga, manhwa is often associated with a younger audience, but there is also subgenres for children, teens, girls, and adults. Originating in Korea, the word webtoon is relatively new in the industry. It is just a combination of World Wide Web with cartoon. It all started with Chollyan, a now defunct internet service that established Chollyan Webtoon to provide comics to its users in August of 2000. Its introduction of the vertical layout was revolutionary. At the time, most online comics followed the traditional landscape layout design. Following the emergence of webtoons, an influx of indie artists jumped into the scene. Early webtoons were recognized as standalone slice-of-life stories, known as omnibus in Korea. Not too long after, webtoons quickly became widespread as the internet took off and became more accessible. Leaning on the fast-growing popularity of webtoons in the early 2000s, Korean internet portals like Dawn and Naver took advantage of webtoons to increase their website traffic. As their crucial internet growth strategy, Dawn and Naver pumped vast sums of money into webtoons. And it paid off. They achieved massive commercial success far beyond their predictions. In 2014, Naver launched a pretty ambitious plan to have webtoons global by 2024 and make them part of mainstream popular culture. So, if you try to look for webtoons, it is most likely that you'll come across Naver's. That's not to say there is no other companies. For example, you have Dawn, though it's entirely in Korean, the Japanese Kamiko, and the American/South Korean Tapas. The business model across those different websites varies, though it generally relies on readers' donations and sponsorships. Naver, for example, will pay up to $1,000 a month to a comic artist that reaches a special milestone of views and subscribers. The history of webtoons goes back to the late 90s, during the boom of launching personal web pages. Back then, several Korean artists began to show their work on their pages instead of debuting through magazines. Called as essay toons or internet toons, they escaped the pressure of having to fill up a page by uploading loosely configured drawings with ample margins that simply required scrolling. Independent artists also paid attention to the online media to secure the niche the mainstream manhwa could not satisfy. The production and marketing expenses on the web were not as high as those in the magazines. Independent manhwa creators could also make new works based on their own ideas. Some popular comics include Snowcat, Marine Blues, and Pepe and Popo series. Unusual at the time, each was self-published online by its own authors rather than through magazines or editorials. In fact, since late 90s and especially early 2000s, best-selling novels often originate in online serials. Top actors can be discovered through their personal blogs. Many of the newest hit manhwas make their start as webcomics, known as webtoons for Koreans. The early use of vertical layout with color in Korea is not a phenomenon in other webcomics markets. In Japan, for instance, many webcomics still use the page-like format derived from print, and often in black and white. The situation is similar in the US, where either short comic strips or page format for longer comics are popularly used in webcomics. The beginning of the boom of webtoons started in the early 21st century, right after the dot-com bubble. Dawn, the second largest internet portal, created a webtoon page in 2003, followed by Naver in June 2004. Because of those portals, the second generation began to develop more commercially. That success made many artists migrate their work to big outlets and receive a writer's fee. The portals that initially saw the manhwas only as a feature to bring traffic to their websites began to notice the tremendous opportunity at their hands. This was especially marked when Love Story, published by Dawn in 2003, hit a mark of 2 million views a day. During the period of the second generation, a in-between generation began to emerge from mid-2010 to 2013. At this moment, Korea not only already had internet at obscene speed, but also the popularization of smartphones. The artists also began to understand how to better use the infinite canvas, which are arts that use the panel's background to serve as a transition. This further distances the difference between the printed and the digital manhwa, making it virtually impossible to replicate on paper. At that moment, some webtoons began to appear that started the massification of manhwa, such as Noblesse, Tower of God, The God of High School, and Girls of the Wilds. It is then that we enter the third generation. Marked by the advances in both the type of plot and the level of quality, many authors are now adapting lit RPG, like the mechanics of an RPG, into a webtoon. These kinds of mechanics helps to better represent a character's evolution and strength level advancement. What was represented as Ki in Dragon Ball becomes a constant representation in the plot. In addition to the massification of isekais that gained popularity in 2016, there is also a leap in visual quality. At that moment, in 2018, we have the beginning of solo leveling that brings some of the most beautiful panels of webtoons launched in the same year. This all of course came with a huge investment. Since then, webtoons teams have started to grow and take the current standard of 6 people working on a project. All of this has accelerated the popularization of webtoons in the West at an unprecedented rate, reaching its peak even on Google Trends. The fourth generation is the one that we are at this moment. The difference that we had when going through the pandemic is still noticeable. Webtoons are even more focused on being snackable and not having a vast amount of content. With spare time at home, consumption increased significantly. On the other hand, the speed of new pieces being launched and translated has reached a new level, even influencing many Western content creators to start producing webtoons in the Korean model. Webtoons are dominating not only the internet in popularity, but also commercially. For example, the market size of manga and comics is $4 and $9 billion respectively. If the webtoons growth forecast continues according to what was presented by the Global Webtoons Market Analysis and Insights, the market will exceed $26 billion by 2028. This is twice the estimated market size for comics in the same year. But now it's your turn to give your opinion. What do you believe is the future of webtoons? Leave it in the comments below, and for more content about anime, manga and manhwa, click on the subscribe button and see ya weebs!